let's go. It's time to be the GOAT. It's time to enter God mode, man, let's get it going. I wanna be the greatest, energy is overflowing. I know I'm stoking the fire, my desire's taking over, not time.
Okay, you beautiful friends, welcome back to the back of the semi-truck, and y'all could tell from the thumbnail, you could tell from the title, we are on part 5 of me learning the lore / timeline of the Sonic video games. And yes, I am still using Jay's reviews because I want one consistent timeline from one person. And I know a couple of you didn't like that I used him in the first part of all of this, but like I've been saying throughout all of this, if you don't like, something he says, hey, let me know down in the comments, and maybe you change my mind on, his timeline and all that stuff. Other than that, let's go ahead and get these normal intro stuff things out the way first, and we could jump into part 5. I don't know exactly which era we are in of Sonic. I have been doing a little bit of looking at stuff, and it seems to be a little bit variations of, eras. There's like a classic era, adventure era, Dreamcast era, modern era. I'm presuming we're in modern era now. I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to presume modern. And then I'm going to do a little research after I'm done with this and before I upload it and all that and figure it out from there. Other than that, we are in a semi-truck. I do have the semi-truck turned off, and noise might creep in from the outside world. Just depends on who drives by and all that good stuff. So, other than that, if you want to also watch his timeline without my pausing and stopping and talking and all that stuff, because we are about to be watching 18 minutes of his part 3 video that he did, and then we're going to jump into part 6, and after that maybe we'll do a part 7, just because we've got the Sonic X Shadow Generations, so there might be a part 7 of this whole learning the lore series, and there might not be. Not 100% sure, but if you want to watch his original video without all of my commentary first, go ahead and jump to the link down in the description, and there you go. So, with all of that intro, it's been a long day. Haven't gotten a lot of miles driven today, but it's been a long day nonetheless. So, with all of that intro stuff out the way, let's go ahead and continue this. Well, I say continue, but start / continue, because this is part 5, but we are starting a new part to Jay's timeline. Either way, time for me to shut up. Let's play this for at least 30 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and play.
The following video is part 3 of my 3-part series covering the chronology and history of Sonic the Hedgehog. If you missed parts 1 and 2 in the last weeks, I'd say watch them first. If you did miss them, I'll briefly say that in the first video I covered the history of the Sonic series from the early to mid-90s, and then in part 2 we spent an incredibly long time on the evolving storyline of the series from the late 90s all the way to the 2000s, leaving off with Sonic Rivals 2 and the PSP. Now we can get into the final video where we go over everything from the late 2000s all the way up to today. There's a lot of things that will be discussed in this one, so you best strap in. But first, I have to mention the fact that this video was brought to you by Omaze. I'm excited to be working with Omaze to offer you the chance to win an all-electric Hummer EV.
Pause. Okay. So, I hate pausing in the middle of his little ad read there, but I'm going to let him finish. But yes, at the beginning, we did cover a lot of the, beginning classic era from like the Genesis days and stuff like that. Then we jumped into the adventure era with Sonic Adventures 1 and 2. And now we got a time frame of when we're going to be, what we're going to be dealing with here. So that's a good thing, and getting me in that mind frame, because I am recording this as of today. It is January 1st, 2025. Happy New Year to y'all. I know y'all aren't seeing this for at least 3 to 5 days after the recording date, but yeah, it's been a while for me since I've recorded anything after all those holidays. So yeah, other than that, I don't even know what I was rambling on about, so let's let him go ahead and just get his stupid little ad read out the way. So,
Edition 1, while supporting a great cause. Rebuilding Together, a nonprofit that does the necessary repairs needed to help their neighbors stay in their homes following disasters. Go to omaze.com/jaysreviews to enter for your chance to win. Omaze is a brand that set out to help nonprofits in a new way, giving people the chance to win once-in-a-lifetime prizes while all the proceeds from the donations support nonprofits, meaning they can spend less time and money raising funds and instead focusing on helping their communities. As of this recording, they've raised over $150 million for charity and only plan to go up from there. So if you're a car enthusiast, or someone who wants an all-electric Hummer EV Edition 1, you'd best be moseying on over to omaze.com/jaysreviews and enter now. All donations support Rebuilding Together, like I said. With that established, let us return to the show.
Balls. Okay, so to be fair with his ad read, that does sound like a really good cause that the ad read is doing, but also on the other end of that, I haven't ever heard of Omaze, so I'm a little like, I don't know if I trust that, since I've literally never heard of them from any other established YouTube personality. So yeah, this is literally the first time I'm hearing about it, but judging by what he's saying, it is a good cause, so I did want to give him, the benefit of giving him that ad read, instead of just, cutting it out, because I had no idea he was going to have an ad read. I didn't want to be a jerk and just cut it out, because it sounds like a good cause. So, yeah, either way, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say from there, other than sounds like a good cause. Go support it if you feel the need to. So 3, 2, 1, and continue and play. Sonic Unleashed.
Sonic Unleashed. I said this one was a lot different than previous games, which can be seen with its gameplay, as the game debuted the boosting mechanic into the 3D series, which redefined how Sonic levels were made going forward, like SA1 had done when it was released. While it does still have many tropes that came from the adventure games in its story, Sonic Unleashed also laid the groundwork for the games that would come after this and how it tells that story. You may have noticed that in a large chunk of the games discussed in Part 2, the series started to focus less on Sonic himself, despite being the title character. Sonic Heroes' most important campaign is Team Dark's, Sonic Battles all about Emerald, Shadow gets his own game. The game titled Sonic the Hedgehog is about Shadow, Silver, and Elise. Sonic doesn't even know what's going on in the Rivals games, and the list goes on. Not to say Sonic was not important in any of those games, you still play as him for most of them, I just mean to say that Unleashed was a bit of a refresh, as the prior games kept going and going with more lore and characters being put on top of each other. Unleashed having almost nothing to do with the plots established in previous games, being more self-contained, which is how a lot of the games in this video are. You begin in outer space with Dr. Eggman's armada that Sonic tears through in spectacular fashion, even becoming Super Sonic in the opening of the game. Still to this day the most visually impressive and engaging Sonic cutscene. This was a setup as Eggman uses his new machine to draw the Chaos Emeralds from Sonic and use their energy to blast the Earth with a giant space laser, but one set to specifically shatter the planet into several different pieces to awaken the monster that lives inside the core called Dark Gaia. Sonic, taking the brunt of the machine's energy, has Dark Gaia's powers infused with him, transforming him into Sonic the Werehog, a vicious, combat-oriented version of Sonic that Eggman flings out the airlock alongside the energy-drained Chaos Emeralds. Although, Sonic doesn't have to stay like that forever, since he only becomes the Werehog at night.
Pause. Okay. So that was a lot, they're not even done with the opening sequence, to my knowledge. Yeah, so that was a lot to take in all at once. Like I said, wow, I don't even know where to begin, because we started with talking about how Sonic and the previous games were starting to take focus off of Sonic, and how we were delving into other people's story, even though Sonic was the title character. And then where I paused was where they're talking about how Sonic was a Sonic. So, wow, that was so much to take in. But it does seem like, and I was going to pause a second. I know my thoughts are scattered all over the place right now, but that was just so much to take in all at once. And I was about to say something and pause it earlier, about to say, oh, hey, that seems pretty interesting. We got Blaze in this game. But wow, yeah. And this cutscene here, I'm agreeing with him so far with, like, this is a really great cutscene, visually stunning. I don't know how I feel about Where Sonic, but great cutscene altogether though. But this is just the beginning of the game, and you got all this freaking action. Him turning into Super Sonic, and him turning into Sonic Werewolf Sonic. It's just so much. So I felt a need to pause it and just slow it down a little bit for that little segment there. So, alright, let's continue. And also, I know I say it in every Learning the Lore video, but I do this whole pause and unpause like that because once my hand gets, if you're looking up here in the top corner of the thing, once my hand gets about right here, that means I need to go ahead and edit and cut and all that good stuff in the video. Because like I always tell y'all, I don't do these videos like most other YouTubers and able to screen record and all that stuff. So yeah, I know I'm repeating myself. I'm like I'll shut up. Let's continue. And
even though he doesn't feel or act differently in this form, he just can't run fast and can instead go combo mad. Anyway, Dark Gaia is too weak to hold form at this point, so Eggman has to find a way to bring it back to use its power to rule the world. Meanwhile, Sonic crash lands on Earth and meets a flying rabbit-looking thing that has no memory of anything, not even its name, that Sonic calls Chip. The two of them join forces with Tails to go on a globe-trotting adventure exploring various countries on Earth, interacting with the people who live there as you gradually bring the planet back together by locating the Gaia temples hidden on each continent that restores the power of the Chaos Emeralds in the process. Sonic Unleashed resonates with a lot of fans specifically because of how it's simple but grand at the same time. Just exploring these Sonicified versions of the different cultures on Earth is charming as Sonic and Chip grow in their friendship throughout the story, cringe-inducing English line reads from Chip notwithstanding. The plot itself isn't that complicated, which I think helps it remain focused on good moments like Amy finding Sonic in Werehog form, but she thinks it's another one of those times where she's confused Sonic for someone else and leaves, which makes Sonic feel bad about his current state. The game also provides countless memorable action scenes throughout that keep the story feeling like a fun adventure rather than melodramatic. By the end of the plot, things become clearer as Chip learns at the 6th Gaia temple that he's actually Light Gaia, whose purpose is to defeat Dark Gaia whenever he rises up, which has occurred in an endless cycle for millions of years. But this is the first time Chip was ever able to see the world he protected and is grateful for that fact. Eggman tried awakening Dark Gaia prematurely, and because of that, Light Gaia also awoke, but unclear on his purpose because of Eggman's forcing this to happen.
Pause, okay. Yeah, I was trying to find a spot in there where I could actually pause at a decent spot, but for some reason Jay's reviews on this video seems to be like he has his edits like super cut very close together when he's talking, so it's kind of like, oh gosh, where to pause. But watching this and listening to it, seeing some of the gameplay, that's actually, it looks like they did a really good job with taking Sonic and slowing him down, because I did hear when they said that when he's in his werewolf state that, you know, he's not different mentally or anything like that, he just can't go fast. So that was a good idea on how to slow him down and add a new game mechanic to, you know, Sonic himself, because without going fast, Sonic would play completely differently as the character he is. And then of course you got Amy. She's, you know, confusing people for Sonic, and that's kind of cute of her. I like that aspect of her. And then we got this, you know, this little Chip fella there. It actually reminds me of a plot point in the last season of Ruby, but the Chip fella, I like the plot point because, you know, they got awakened from their slumber because Eggman tried to wake up Dark Gaia, and that means Light Gaia, which is who Chip is. I think they said his name is Chip. I'm horrible with names, by the way, in case nobody's recognized that by now. But yeah, you know, the Dark Gaia can't hold their form. So I'm wondering, as we're going to progress with whatever the storyline is here, if this isn't the final form of Light Gaia as well, because you obviously got the the one end over here with dark and light, and you know, so I'm presuming that the light version of the Gaia, this isn't their final form. So let's continue and find out. And play.
But it doesn't matter now as you get to the coolest climax in the Sonic franchise. While you've been restoring the shattered planet, Eggman has built his final fortress on the last continent yet to be restored, building it around the last Gaia temple that goes directly to the core of the Earth where Dark Gaia resides. Ever since Sonic Adventure 1, the Doctor has been discussing his plans for Robotnik Land and later Eggman Land as his ultimate goal. Unleashed finally decided to pay that off by having him succeed in creating it. The ultimate monument to himself. Eggman statues and symbols everywhere. It's a carnival from hell, and this is the final level. They don't skip a beat here since it's one of the hardest Sonic levels to ever exist. Roller coaster rides that go off the tracks and onto a path of lasers, conveyor belts of doom, surprise blindsides, no drop shadows. Wait, what? It's memorable to say the absolute least. As if the final level wasn't chaotic enough, the final bosses are even more so. Sonic as the Werehog first battling the Egg Dragoon mech that sends you plummeting into the core of the Earth as you use the Werehog's strength to pull the machine apart piece by piece. Even though the emeralds are all back to normal, Dark Gaia is fully powered up as Light Gaia uses his powers to call upon all of the temples to form a battle suit as Sonic transforms into Super Sonic to land the final blow. Dark Gaia also draws his power back from the Werehog form before this, so Sonic loses out in that transformation. The finale of Unleashed does just about everything you'd want in one of these games, although mechanically the last boss is a slog to play, going on for far too long and being very repetitive.
Balls. Okay. So, technically, Light Gaia, that is their final form, but they did, from what I'm hearing, they formed like an armor type suit that where they could fight the Dark Gaia, which I guess that's a pretty good way of doing it. And as far as... Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Because earlier they said something about Eggman Land. That actually sounds like a pretty good spin-off game for like a new... You know, because we used to have Sonic Pinball back in the day. So I feel like there could be like a spin-off game with Eggman Land. But... be like an Eggman, you know, actually, it could be like Wario, you know, but Eggman. Okay, so yeah. They could have a spin-off game from the Sonic franchise in the same vein as like Wario from Mario Brothers, with little mini party games and stuff like that for, you know, Wario does, but have it Eggman centric and for the Sonic fans. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it would be a pretty good idea, but then again, I don't know. Usually ideas that I have in my head turn out pretty bad, so I wouldn't trust what I'm saying, but it sounds like a good idea. An Eggman Land game that's just a bunch of party games in the same vein as Wario, but with Eggman's mentality. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what y'all think of that. So let's continue and play.
But the moment was quite cool as Super Sonic blasts right through Dark Gaia to finish it off. The planet is saved from Dark Gaia's corruption and the final continent begins to go back in place. Light Gaia, knowing he's fulfilled his duties, sends Sonic back to the surface ready to go back to hibernation until Dark Gaia comes around once more. Sonic still has Chip's ring though, and he can use that to remember him by, setting off for the next adventure, ending Sonic Unleashed. One of my favorite Sonic games despite its pacing problems. It's just a memorable game, and a challenging one. A big win for its replay value. For the timeline, I'm placing it right after Rivals 2, not just because it came after, but because of what I said at the top of the segment. Unleashed was the beginning of a new direction for Sonic, so it's only natural to place it here. Although technically, what order the Rivals games, Secret Rings, and Unleashed go in really could be any mixture of the four, just as long as Rivals 2 is after 1, obviously, and that it's after the Rush games. But that's what happens when things become more self-contained, I suppose. Moving right along, the next game dropped just a few months after Unleashed, Sonic and the Black Knight on the Wii from 2009, this being the sequel to Secret Rings. This time, Sonic is pulled into the world of King Arthur by a wizard called Merlin.
Pause. Okay, so when they said Sonic and, I think, the Black Knight, I can't remember what they said, but it was reminiscent of the Secret Rings games, so I was kind of like, in my head, I was thinking, I wonder if this is a sequel to, the Aladdin-esque genie type of game we had, but with a twist on it. And it is. It's with King Arthur, but instead of Merlin, we got Merlina. So, okay, cool. I like the idea. I like, it's kind of a little strange when you slow down and think about it. Sonic the Hedgehog within fairy tale type stuff. But at the same time, I could see it working. So, yeah, let's continue and play.
Merlina is being hunted by King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Lancelot, who's portrayed as Shadow, Gawain, who's Knuckles, and Percival, who's Blaze. Merlina claims that King Arthur is immortal and holds on to power with the scabbard of Excalibur, so Sonic needs to defeat him to end his rule. Sonic pulls the sword, Caliburn, from the stone and uses it to become a knight himself. The story is about Sonic and Caliburn, who can talk, as Sonic actually gains the skills to defeat the Knights of the Round Table and then King Arthur. This game has some of the coolest moments for Sonic, as his cockiness feels right at home for this kind of adventure as he slashes through enemies and obstacles, while still taking the time to be a proper hero by helping people in need, not just fighting bad guys. But in the final twist, King Arthur was nothing more than an illusion, and Merlina wanted the scabbard of Excalibur to become super powerful herself.
Pause. That dirty Merlina. Oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming, actually. Holy crap. Wow. I like the idea of this game. I bet it's actually pretty cool. Wow. Even with the headphones, I heard those fireworks just then. Ah, my goodness, I hate this time of the year so much. But yeah, holy crap. Merlina, plot twist. It was her the whole time. Wow. But, as I was saying, I do like the idea of this game. It feels like they're kind of role-playing, but at the same time, things are canon somehow as well. Because we got Knuckles in there, we got Blaze, we got, they're all playing their parts, hence the reason why I say it feels like they're role-playing, but at the same time, everything's canon. So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, I like it. And, I ain't got the right words for it, but it just feels, this game particularly, this game feels more awesome than the Secret Rings. I don't know, maybe it's because I think it's more along the lines of what Jay's reviews was saying about Sonic's cockiness here, or arrogance, being portrayed in this game. I think that's probably why this one works more than the Arabian Nights styled game of the Secret Rings. That's just me. That's along my lines of thinking. So, I don't know. Either way, let's continue and play.
This is because she's grown to be nihilistic, seeing that all things come to an end, now wanting to have the power to keep the kingdom going forever. Sonic and the other knights team up to stop her plans as the sacred swords combine to turn Sonic into Excalibur Sonic, who defeats the Dark Queen form of Merlina. In the ending, Sonic shows compassion for her, understanding why she might do this, but knowing it's natural for things to change just the same.
Merlina, every world has its end. I know that's kind of sad, but that's why we gotta live life to the fullest in the time we have. At least, that's what I figure.
Sonic's actions deeming him worthy of being the true King Arthur. No, I'm not kidding, that's a thing that happens. But Sonic eventually returns to his own world and gets his story enshrined in the book, Sonic and the Black Knight. Like Secret Rings, the plot of this one is perfect for Sonic Team to get more out there and creative with Sonic, and I'm all in favor of it. The timeline in this one is funny, because there's little to work with, given just how isolated the plot here is. However, there's just one detail to latch onto. In the post-credits scene, Sonic is criticized by Amy for using this phony King Arthur story to excuse his having forgotten about their date. In Sonic Unleashed, it's possible to accept a date from Amy that will happen after the world is saved from Dark Gaia. And there you have it, the game takes place after Sonic Unleashed because of that.
Pause. Okay, so looking at the game and some of the gameplay and all that stuff, I love the idea. But the only thing I'm really seemingly having a problem with when it comes to Sonic and the Black Knight is the cutscenes. I like the idea of the cutscenes because they feel like a comic book that I'm looking at, but judging by what I'm seeing from here, the cutscenes, I like the comic book aesthetic of it, but I would rather that it be more animated. Like, you know, the movements would be a little more fluid, as opposed to, you know, Sonic's here, then here in another panel, and then up here in another panel. I would just like more fluidity when it comes to, you know, I would like to see it more animated as opposed to comic bookish. Maybe comic book style, but more animated cutscenes, because if they're talking, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I like more movement when it comes to cutscenes. If I'm looking, unless it's like unless it's a handheld that I'm playing. If I'm playing on an actual console, I want it to have movement in the cutscenes. I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking, but that's just me. And then, as far as Amy Rose and the date, was there a date that they were supposed to go on? Because I didn't think they were an actual couple or anything right now. That just seems a little odd right there, because I always thought that Amy was more along the lines of, you know, being the one to chase Sonic, but Sonic never giving in to Amy type deal. I thought it was one of those cat and mouse type relationships. I don't know. Either way, let's continue. Next game in the series. Oh, and by the way, I feel like I have this at a really good stopping point. So, I didn't watch none of it. I just seen where when we get to it, you'll see where that's where he goes into the next game, which is Sonic Generations. So it's right there on the cusp of him starting that one. So I figured that was going to be a good stopping point. So yeah, when we get close to that point, y'all know we're getting close to being done with part 5. So either way, let's continue and play.
So now we reach the 2010s. I already dismissed Sonic Freeriders earlier, so we can just talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, which released in 2010, and Episode 2, which came out in 2012. Despite the name Sonic 4, I'm tossing these games out of the stratosphere as far as canon is concerned. Externally, Sonic 4 was meant to be a mobile game that Sega upcharged as a console game and called it Sonic 4 to cash in. But then they called it Episode 1 to make up for its disgraceful lack of content. It's a total sham of a game. Episode 2 improved things, but it was too little too late for this whole thing. But then internally, it's a mess. Episode 1 kind of breaks my rule that games with no story are things I can't work into a timeline, as the plot is just Eggman is bad, stop it.
Pause. Okay, so I do remember when these games came out. I think I remember downloading the first one and kind of goofing off with it a little bit, but and usually he does explain why he just kind of does what he does with the timeline, and then I have to pause it and be like, I agree with that. But can't we just kind of throw Sonic 4 Episode 1 and 2 kind of just in the past of the timelines, like after Sonic 3 or something? I mean, instead of just tossing them out completely, just since it's Eggman bad storyline, because that's the gist I'm getting from why he's just like, there's no story, Eggman bad, that's the whole concept. If that's all there is, then just place it somewhere in the past and say, this is where it goes. So, let's see what he says. I know I'm talking, you know, a little bit before he's actually explaining everything. But at the same time, I kind of feel a need sometimes to be like, oh, why are you doing this? But he'll explain. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt and find out why he's just disregarding them altogether. So, play.
It is a story, but it's so insignificant because it's a mobile game, which is fine for that platform, but not for the sequel to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, one of the most epic 2D platformers of its day. It also vaguely takes place between Sonic 3 and Sonic Adventure, muddling the waters with the 4 years of spin-off games that happened between them that I talked about in Part 1. Then you have Episode 2, which has more going for it technically, but is still a mess conceptually. It takes place immediately after Episode 1, with Tails returning for this game. But then the game also tries cross-promoting the Sonic CD remaster from 2011 by bringing back Little Planet from that game. as Eggman retrieves Metal Sonic from Stardust Speedway and grows him back to full power in order to fight Sonic again. This could explain why Metal Sonic was created before Mecha Sonic but then not used again for several games. He simply got left behind on Little Planet, although it shows Stardust Speedway bad future because they ripped the assets from Sonic Generations, which, if taken literally, means that Little Planet couldn't have left because if you don't destroy all the robot generators in CD or don't collect the Time Stones, the Doctor uses the Time Stones himself to bring Little Planet back. Oops. But then, you have the Death Egg Mark II being created around Little Planet, which, regardless of what ending you get in Episode 2, is still that way by the end of the game. And since Episode 3 was deconfirmed before Episode 2 even released, it leaves the plot of Sonic 4 off on a cliffhanger that will never be resolved. So, rip Little Planet, I guess. For all these reasons combined, I am chucking Sonic 4 where it belongs, straight out of canon. I decided to devote all this time to it now because it's a game literally called Sonic 4, so one would think it's important enough to include, but I am not, and those were my reasons. So let's continue with actually important...
Balls, okay. So, there's his reasons. Do I understand his reasons? Yes. Because it creates conflict and all that good stuff, but at the same time, you could have just simply pushed them in somewhere, just as a generalized, like, hey, this is where we're putting it. It kind of screws with the timeline a little bit, but we're going to kind of just work with it and kind of tweak it a little bit and just be like, cool, that's good. I would have just threw it after Sonic 3 and been like, hey, look, there's some stuff here, but we're going to have to kind of fill in the gaps. But that's just me. I'm not the one who's literally sat down and did all the legwork like he has. So I understand where he's coming from, and I'll agree with him for the most part, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm a stickler. I want everything to be involved. Heck, I want Sonic Spinball to be involved with it. Or Pinball, not Spinball. What am I thinking? I want Sonic Pinball to be in there. So, I'm just, yeah. I like everything to be added. So, either way, let's continue and play.
Games. Sonic Unleashed was like the Adventure 1 of the 2010s, a game preceding the new decade that laid down a lot of the foundation for later entries while still being similar to previous ones, like I said. In that comparison, Sonic Colors is definitely the Adventure 2 equivalent, as this game was released on the Wii in 2010. You still had the boost gameplay from Sonic Unleashed, but now with reduced scope in terms of story, which was a breath of fresh air at the time of Colors' release. I mean, how many times in Part 2 did I say, Sonic then turns into Super Sonic to defeat the monster? It's not something I have a problem with, but Colors, like I said, was a breath of fresh air. This game takes a more comedic approach in terms of writing, which also stuck with the games that followed this one, introducing a new voice cast for all the major characters besides Eggman, and changing the lore a bit once again. In Japan, Sonic's world has always been called Earth ever since Sonic 1. Once the games went 3D and the Japanese lore just became the main Sonic canon worldwide, it was still called Earth. Starting with Sonic Colors, it became a little more ambiguous.
And Sonic's world will be the center of my interplanetary theme park.
Whatever Sonic's world is. 2010 was clearly meant to be a clean slate for this series. The incredibly positive reception to Sonic Colors cemented that direction. So this time around, Dr. Eggman, apparently feeling remorseful for his past transgressions, has built a giant interstellar amusement park that Sonic and Tails have snuck into, as Sonic believes something must be afoot. He is correct, because Eggman has attached several planets to the main hub of the park and transformed them into theme park rides. Eggman's true goal was to get Planet Wisp, a far-off planet that's home to the Wisps, a race of aliens possessing incredible power called Hyper-Goons, which the Doctor wants to use to power his planet-wide mind control.
Balls. Okay, so in one game earlier, we have Eggman Land, or Eggman World, or whatever the heck that place was called, where I went on a tangent about how they need to do a spin-off game, which now we have him creating a whole world that's nothing more than an amusement park for himself. I'm telling y'all, this could work as a video game. Jeez. I mean, yes, Eggman, yeah. Oh no, the villain. Let's be real though. Wario, he has his own games. Let's give Eggman his literal own game like this, where it's nothing but a bunch of party games for, you know, his little amusement park slash Eggman World or Land or whatever. I mean, it kind of works. He kind of has a theme here going on where he just wants... He's starting to get some, like, he's getting the personality of someone who wants to have, stuff centered around him a little bit. So I think it would work great either way, though. And these little creatures that have these powers where he's trying to generate the power for his little, amusement park / world, this seems to be a pretty good idea as well, because now it adds conflict in there for Sonic to go off and save these creatures, because they do look pretty cute and adorable, and Sonic needs to be there to save them. So let's continue and play.
For that reason, he's rounding up wisps en masse and using them to power all his machines as Sonic sets out to rescue them, being able to use their power to perform new abilities, as each type of wisp can pull off different feats, like the cyan laser wisp that Sonic can use to fly forward and ricochet off of walls, or the orange rocket wisp that can blast into the sky. Sonic and Tails specifically befriend a white wisp called Yacker, needing Tails' Miles Electric tablet to translate his and the other wisps' alien language. By the end, Eggman is converting the wisps into these negative wisps called Purple Frenzy Wisps, or Purple Void Wisps, but we'll get into that in a second. As Sonic puts a stop to it all in a battle against the Doctor's final mech, the Egg Nega Wisp armor, as the station is destroyed in a giant explosion. But the trapped planets are set free and the Wisps can return home, thankful to Sonic for everything he's done, even saving him from the explosion as he couldn't outrun it on his own. Another simple story concluded. However, it's the canonicity of Sonic Colors where things get interesting. Sonic Colors, like many games before it, had two versions. The main series game is, without question, Sonic Team's version on the Wii. However, Dimps, the developer of the Sonic Advance and Sonic Rush games, had developed a DS version of Sonic Colors that launched alongside the game Sonic Team did. While it may seem like an easy thing to ignore, like I had done for Sonic 1 in the Game Gear, I don't think we should write off Sonic Colors in the DS quite like that, because it's not the same story but presented worse, like, say, Generations on 3DS or Unleashed on Wii. The DS version of Sonic Colors is the exact same plot, but without the focus on humor, instead being more to the point. Which isn't really an argument in its favor or against it in terms of canon. But then you have the fact that Sonic Colors DS fleshes out the theme park by populating the attractions with Sonic characters, something that didn't happen on the Wii, which made the whole thing feel pretty empty. These characters lead to non-essential moments, but ones that make it feel like you're still in the Sonic world. For example, Eggman's new lackeys, Orbot and Cubot, are tasked with capturing wisps, but they accidentally go after Cheese the Chow and you help Cream by stopping them. Colors on DS being the first time Silver and Blaze interact in Timeline B, as the two acknowledge that they work well together, and perhaps they once did. Things like that which serve to add more meat onto the bones of Colors. But that's not all. DS Colors has exclusive wisps, like the Red Burst Wisp or the Purple Void Wisp, and while you could say that these differences are to be tossed out because it's the secondary version of Colors, the Burst Wisp would later appear in Sonic Forces as one of the Avatar's Wisp-On abilities. And as if that wasn't good enough evidence that there was something here, this will do it. While Sonic Colors in the Wii did not have a supersonic battle or involve the Chaos Emeralds in the story whatsoever, the DS game is a different story. You can collect the emeralds in the special stages, and then, after the Nega Wisp armor is defeated, you unlock the true final boss of Colors DS with a Mother Wisp, a figure not included nor mentioned at all in the Wii game, is corrupted with negative Wisp energy herself as Super Sonic defeats this form of the Mother Wisp, returning her to...
Okay, so pause. I really like... It sounds like... Well, first, let me go back to the Wii version. It sounds like he is correct, saying the simplicity of the story makes it a breath of fresh air. That sounds wonderful, because if you're constantly dealing with planetary destructive type things, like we're dealing with the DS version of this, it's like, come on, let's get back to some of the basics of Sonic, where he's facing something that's not like world leveling threatening type situation. So that sounds like it is truly a breath of fresh air. And I got distracted just then because I just heard like a fire truck or something passing by in the streets out there. So okay, cool. Hopefully they're all right. So yeah, cool. Let's get back focused back on Sonic. So, but with the DS version, it sounds like the DS version is a much better game and just adds so many more characters as well, because he also brought up the point of it's fleshed out with characters, you know, from Sonic, such as, you know, Eggman's got some robot lackeys that they're introducing, and Blaze and Silver in there, and you know, then we get Super Sonic here, where at the end of it, facing, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but he's facing yet another world-leveling, threatening villain where he has to turn into Super Sonic. So, yeah, I wouldn't actually mind playing Sonic Colors on the DS. And with the deals that our middle boy is finding on Facebook Marketplace on like 2DSs and DSs in general, I might be able to find a cheap DS and actually find this game eventually, and never know, play it. Either way, let's continue. We don't have that many more minutes left of this. So 15, 16, 17, 18. So we got like 3 minutes total. I don't know how much time I'm going to be pausing and stopping, but let's find out. Let's continue and play.
Normal. Which brings the story to a close. The Mother Wisp returns in the background of Team Sonic Racing, which is canon, and we'll talk about it later. But then that begs the question, am I outright saying that the DS version of Colors is canon? Well, when I first conceived of this video, I did go in thinking I was going to say that because of this evidence, but then one thing got in my way. This moment from Sonic Lost World.
I've been looking for you, Baldy McNosehair!
This calls back to the translator not functioning right in Sonic Colors.
Who they call Baldy Nosehair.
Baldy Nosehair! That's the best thing I've heard all day! I gotta remember that one.
I searched the script of Colors on DS, but this interaction never happened, but clearly is canon in Lost World and Frontiers. So where does that leave us?
Pause. Why can't you... So, let me get this straight. Is he going to throw out... Is he going to throw out the DS version of Colors just because of that one simple interaction? Because in Sonic Racing, he says that the Mother Sprite is in the game, in that game, making the DS version canon. So it's going to be kind of hard to throw one out that has one character in it, but this other version on the Wii doesn't have the character. So how are you going to... I don't know. Let's just see what he does, because that seems a little far-fetched to me to just throw out canonicity. Hopefully that's a word. I have no idea. Just because of one simple thing. Either way, play.
Well, I've reached a new conclusion. Rather than simply stating that one version of Colors is canon over another, instead I'm going to do what I had done with the 90s games and headcanon it to fill in the holes. Since both versions feature the same exact main plot, we could simply say that what Colors DS added, like the Burst Wisp, the extra character cutscenes, and the Mother Wisp all happened, we just didn't see them in the Wii game. It was off-screen. Just imagine a fully 3D version of these cutscenes and this boss fight and you're good. Having said all that, we can safely play Sonic Colors after Sonic and the Black Knight with no...
Okay, so Paul's right there, because thank goodness he didn't actually just say, oh no, they're not canon because of this one simple thing. It's like, yeah, it's canon, just happened off screen, head canon, cool beans, I'm for it. And I thought this was where I was going to cut it, but let's just go ahead and see where they go, because I see on my screen at least, I have no idea with the editing if everything will line up 100%, because sometimes with editing, I will not lie to y'all, it is off by like a millisecond or two sometimes. So yeah, hopefully though, because this says Sonic Generations. So let's continue and find out if I cut it right in the right place. And play.
No issues. But then you get Sonic Generations, the Sonic game that, after deliberating on it, I realized is my favorite Sonic game of all time. This was the 20th anniversary celebration as you ran through 9 of the best stages from Sonic's history as not just modern Sonic but also classic Sonic. The original designs of Sonic fused together to represent the series in the 90s. Modern Sonic playing like Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Colors, and classic Sonic levels were inspired by the games on the Genesis. It's just a fun game with minimal padding or poor content. It's a straightforward, good time. One that is light on story, though. Eggman was trapped in outer space following the ending of Sonic Colors until he stumbled upon a force unlike anything he'd ever seen. The Time Meter, which Eggman uses to enlist the help of his younger self, and the two use the Time Meter to destroy all of Sonic's past victories, which first begins with classic Sonic who's running through Green Hill Zone and is caught in the effects of the
Pause. Okay, so I don't know how much of this I'm actually going to keep in here, because now I feel like I have to go back and going to have to restart where it's Sonic Generations at the beginning of it for the next videos, part 6, because this, I'm going to stop in the middle of it by accident, because as of right now, it's like 56 seconds left before I cut it off. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. So I'm probably going in part 6 add all this, but let's see where I cut it off. I'm just going to let it play out and then throw out my afterthoughts from here and just go with it. So let's continue. And although I am loving what I'm seeing from this, because I just saw such a freaking cute version of Eggman there. That was pretty freaking awesome. I thought, you know, the chubby little cute Sonic was cute, but then I saw the, you know, the round version of Eggman, and I'm like, that's cute and adorable. So, yeah, let's continue. I'm going to let it finish playing out completely for the next minute, and then just give my afterthoughts and all that good stuff. So, let's continue and play.
Time meter. Fast forward to the present, and Sonic is celebrating his birthday with his friends as the time meter blasts through history, warping Sonic to a timeless void where he has to play through these old levels and fight old bosses to rescue his friends with the help of his younger self, gathering the emeralds along the way, ending with Super Modern Sonic and Super Classic Sonic destroying the time meter, putting an end to the latest Eggman scheme, as the two doctors get trapped in white space themselves. No idea how they got out of that one. As the game ends back at the birthday party with Classic Sonic and Classic Tails given a portal back to their time, ending Sonic Generations. In terms of the game's actual story, that is genuinely it. I said it was light on plot after all. This is even less material than Colors. The plot of the game feels undercooked as the rest of the cast do nothing but appear in these tiny cutscenes after each stage. This game was definitely more about the gameplay than most of the games up to that point. With the story stating it takes place right after Sonic Colors, we will place this game, from modern Sonic's perspective, right after Colors. But where this matter gets more intriguing is in relation to how it goes from...
Okay, so, okay, I guess my afterthoughts here after watching all that. Unfortunately, this video is going to only be like a 50-minute long one instead of my normal hour long, but that's because, you know, I'm watching shorter lengths of time. But I guess I've got the entire thing of Sonic in this. I mean, Sonic Generations. So I literally just got the entire thing of Sonic Generations right there because, okay, so I don't have to go back and, okay. So cool beans. I don't have to go back and kind of put that whole thing of Sonic Generations in there. I know my afterthoughts are a little jumbled here because I thought I didn't cut it in a good spot, but when I actually did. But yeah, so thoughts about Sonic Generations, since I let it play out there for the end of what I had. I like the plot. It might not seem like much of a plot or much, you know, meat on the plot because the cutscenes are just a bunch of characters popping in and saying something and stuff like that. But I mean, if you think about it, honestly, it would probably make for a good hour-long special if it was just a cartoon episode. But the plot seems really good. I mean, you got Eggman. He ends up with some device to, you know, change time and go back into time. And that's how we get the classic chubby version of Sonic. We get modern Sonic. We get chubby Eggman version. We get Tails, classic Tails. We get modern Tails. We get modern Eggman. And then, you know, they all just kind of got to work together on everything and figure things out from there. And from what he said, it ends with Eggman and classic Eggman trapped in a void. And he literally says, I don't even know how they got out of that. So obviously that means further down the line, they get out of it. So, yeah. And then it looks like we stopped on a point where classic Sonic is still around in some way. So I'm going to have to wait until I do part 6 of this in order to actually see that, because I don't know how that's even possible. Either way, though, I know I stopped on a decent point. So pretty much in a nutshell, right now, with Jay's reviews, with the modern era, we're just going with pretty much placing each game back to back in the timeline, because we started with Sonic Unleashed, then we went to Sonic and the Black Knight. I think that's what it was. And then we went to Sonic Colors. Then there was a moment where we had Sonic 4. He tossed that out. And then he literally just had Sonic Colors, and then we get Sonic Generations. Literally each game in the modern era looks like it's just going to go along the timeline in order. So I'm wondering if there is a modern game, though, where he's going to be like, you know what? This one goes back here with Sonic Advance 2 or something like that. So I don't know if he's going to do that. I kind of hope he does, because I like the idea of, you know, some games being a prequel game, but at the same time, we're in the modern era. I kind of hope it kind of just stays the same and we just keep going from here. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. Then on top of that, now after I finish the rest of this video, which we'll do part 6, and that'll be all of Jay's reviews timeline. That'll be all of it. We would have sat back here in the back of the semi-truck for nearly 6 hours at that point, learning the lore of the Sonic the Hedgehog timeline. So, yeah. Now I've got to make a decision, though, is after I'm done with that, am I going to then do another video of more lore of Sonic the Hedgehog after whatever his stuff was? Because we do have Sonic X Shadow Generations, I think it was. Yeah, pretty much I've got to do a part 7 after I'm done with part 6, because I'm going to feel incomplete without getting the complete lore. So, other than that, I don't know what else to say. I do know I need to wake up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, call the warehouse, be like, hey, is the load ready? That way then I could drive to Jacksonville area. I think it's actually Orange Park, and then somewhere else in Jacksonville. I don't even know. It's close to Jacksonville. Either way. Plus on top of that, I'm kind of losing my voice here, so yeah, I'm done. I'm going to pass it off to y'all. And if y'all have been here, and wow, you are a very loud vehicle, but nonetheless, if y'all have been here and you've ever made it to the end of one of these, then you already know what I'm about to be saying here at the end. It's my normal outro. It is what I always say. I'm passing it off to y'all now. Hit that like, tickle to subscribe. Don't be texting and driving. Watch what you love and love what you watch. And take it away, Mr. Rogers.
I like you just the way you are.